Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show will revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Moosie Drier and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Moosie Drier, and we're big fans of today's guest.
Ain't it good, ain't it right, that you are with me here tonight? Rock me gently, rock me slowly, take it easy, don't you know?
Oh, honey, honey, you are my candy girl.
He's a member of the Canadian Music Industry Hall of Fame.
That all you really need in the music business is ignorance and confidence, and your success will be assured.
He's written for artists such as the Monkees and the Archies, including the huge hit Sugar Sugar. He's also had his own hits, including Rainbow Ride, Baby I Love You, and the chart-topping Rock Me Gently. Please help us welcome Andy Kim. Andy, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah,
I'm glad
welcome.
we're seeing each other.
Yes, well, we have a lot to cover, but I want to start by going back with you. Your parents were Lebanese and then moved to Montreal, where you were born and grew up. So I want to ask, what kind of music did you hear in the house growing up, and what were your musical tastes?
Well, there was a lot of, Lebanese music going on. But the savior was that my two older brothers, they had a record player and they played 45s. They had music magazines. And that's where I found my path to life.
The talent that you have, when did you know?
I have no fucking talent. You should know that.
Yeah, you do.
Yes, you do.
No, you know what? I never saw it from that perspective.
Right.
I only saw it from the perspective of, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm excited to do. I literally, figuratively ran away from home.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, part of me feels that I was destined to do this. Another part of me feels like, okay, something else in my life did not want me to grow up to be here in that environment. I needed something else.
Right. Yeah. It was what, in your teens, you fled for New York, right? You left your family behind at that point?
Well, you never leave your family, by the way.
But yeah.
Physically. Look, I grew up in the tenements of Montreal.
Right.
And your life is already destined. But this is me looking back.
Okay.
Sure.
When you're in your teens, early teens, you either conform or you travel with instinct. And I always traveled with instinct without really having to account for it. I wasn't there to explain myself. I was there to do something. Look, I'll tell you what changed my life is my two older brothers played American music. I borrowed my older brother's transistor radio one night. And after about maybe a good 15 minutes of static, I found WABC New York. This is Cousin Brucey.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like something I'd never heard of, something that was just completely different. But that was the shot of adrenaline that ran through me throughout the days and nights, and my feeling like there was something else other than where I lived and other music than what was being played on the radio.
Right. Well, what do you think your life was destined to, as you say, if in Montreal, if you had left there?
My brothers got into the food business.
Yeah.
All of them. I'm the third of four. Um, I think everybody chooses their own destiny,
Mhm.
and sometimes you choose it when you're old enough to understand. Sometimes you choose it when it's late in life, and sometimes you choose it because you don't know why. You just know that that frequency of a transistor radio.
Yeah.
You know, someone once said to analyze is to paralyze.
That's true.
So I don't go there
Yeah.
often, you know, so
Yeah.
it's really it's a mystery to me sometimes. It really is.
And you mentioned cousin Brucey, who's amazingly still going, by the way. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
I
I find
did a show for him with my friend Tony Orlando. I think it was around the summertime, just outside of New York City. There was like 10,000 people there.
wow.
It was incredible. Tony Orlando, he did it because he's known cousin Brucey for a long time, and
Mhm.
and Tony knows everybody, and he just a marvelous, marvelous entertainer, but also human being. Um, and I knew him in my early life in New York City that he was a song plugger, although he had a hit, called Bless Her when he was like 16 or something.
Mhm.
Um, so Tony retires and his band is my band when I
Oh, great.
US. So it's a cool, I don't know how things happen. You
It's
know, sometimes people say, so how do you how do you live with your life? How do you live with your partner? How do you and sometimes there's no answer. You just are.
Yeah. You don't question it. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
only because to question it is to find reason. And sometimes there's no reason. It's
Mhm.
just,
Let me go back with you because you went to New York because this story that I read about you I find fascinating. You get to New York, you just go into the Brill building, into the offices of Lieber and Stoller, who are responsible for so many hits, just to play them your music. I mean, what was into your thought process? What happened that day that you just walked in and say, I want to play you my music?
well, the backstory is WABC was all about New York City.
Hmm.
There was a mystery to what that was. But the ability for me to borrow a transistor radio, because my brothers loved music and they had 45s everywhere and they had magazines everywhere. And I loved school. I loved homework. And so I would look at their magazines and eventually they show you, you can see that it says, Baby, I Love You, written by Jeff Barry, Ellie Greenwich, Phil Spector. I don't know who they are, but there was enough of that. And there were addresses, 1619 Broadway. And there were, 1650 was across the street and around the corner. And they called that the Brill Building. But most of the songs that I heard, um, there was Jeff Barry's name, was first. I could have gone to Ellie Greenwich, which was his wife at the time, or Phil Spector. But there's something about wanting to meet Jeff. So you go into the Brill Building and you look at the names on the wall, and eventually you're on the ninth floor. I can't really explain what pulled me, what pushed me. There's no serum that I can turn around. I can just, in the aftermath of growth and getting older, I try to put the pieces together, but I wasn't living any pieces at that time. It was all brand new.
Hmm.
But I'm
Uh,
brave, you know?
Yeah, you mentioned Jeff Barry. I mean, I don't think enough people realize how great he was with song. I mean, look at the Do a Diddy Diddy, Chapel of Love, River Deep Mountain High. What was your relationship with him?
Well, my relationship was me waiting for 2.5 hours. What was great about Jerry and Mike's office was that you walked in and there really was a wonderful lobby. It wasn't really, I mean, I remember it as huge, but maybe it was small. And then there were doors that took you to, whether it's Phil's office or Jeff's office or Ellie or Jerry and Mike, and there was always this great piano. Um, and so after waiting 2.5 hours, she says, "Okay, well, we'll see you, but he's really busy." So I went in, and he was on the phone, and I sat there. And then he stayed on the phone, and then I started realizing, well, maybe they put me with the wrong person because I don't know. So he gets off the phone and he says, "What do you got?" I said, "Well, I have this song," and he says, "Okay, let me hear it." So I play it, and he says, "Well, I like the first two verses. Forget the others, and come back, and we'll work on it." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but I got to get on a bus because my mom and dad want me to come back home and all of this." And he said, "Well, get the information from the girl outside." And he said, "I got to go. I'm going to the studio." And I said the words that changed my life. I said, "Can I come with you? I've never been in a studio before." How fucking naive
Well,
is that?
yeah. You're either naive or ballsy as hell. Either
Yes.
way, what a great move.
Well, you know what? Um, I was in over my head, to be honest with you,
Mhm.
because um, I just, hey man, I don't know how it happened, but I've had the greatest life on this planet.
Mhm.
I never looked over my shoulder. I was never jealous of anyone. I didn't want to write MacArthur Park because Jimmy Webb was so friggin' talented. The Beatles were like I'm in awe of all of them. To have to have not only gone to the Brill Building, but he eventually became a Brill Building writer and 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 being Jeff's co-writer on
Right.
stuff.
Andy, was the song "I Loved You Once"? Is that the song you were talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's that and later on, coupled with when I came back, coupled with How Do We Ever Get This Way?
Okay. So, okay, what you went to the studio with him? What
I
happened?
went to the studio. He said, as soon as I said, "Can I come with you? I've never been in a studio before." He looked at me and he said, uh, "Have you eaten?" I said, "Yeah, but I hadn't." And he said, "Well, I only have half a sandwich. I'll give you one half." And I'm eating a sandwich and thinking, I can't believe I'm walking with Jeff Barry. I just can't. And my mouth is shut. All I know is that I'm excited. And what basically happens is we end up going to a studio called Mirror Sound, and I walk in behind them, and he points to where I should be sitting behind the engineer. And he leaves and he goes into the studio, and there's people there. But I've never been in a studio before. And he in turn makes sure, because I got up to leave after a few minutes. I didn't know what was going on. I needed to get on a bus again. And he did this, like, just sit down. And then about 10 minutes later, I snuck away, got the phone numbers. I came home. I'm gonna write with Jeff Barry. I'm gonna record. It's just a fantasy to my family.
First of all, that's a scene in a movie, in a biopic right there. And how beautiful is that? Because unfortunately, today's time, some kids like, "Hey, can I come with you to the studio?" security, like that. I just don't think that the world is as innocent as that. And good on him for taking you along.
Fuck yes, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think, you know what? He's a brilliant songwriter.
Hmm.
And in order to be a brilliant songwriter, I think you have to have certain kind of instincts, you know.
Right.
You you need to that thing that you can't explain because it's just the thing, you know. Not
Right.
everybody can be behind a microphone. Not everybody can pull a tooth.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, he was one of those. I learned so much from him. Um, as a matter of fact, that maybe I became part of him, you know, because there was there was this thing about um, his talent and the fact that I'm in awe, which inspired me. You know, when you're in awe of someone that gives you like free reign. Man, I played on my early records, and I'm not a guitar player. I never went to school to learn anything. How did we ever get this way? Was two chords.
You were one of the writers on Sugar Sugar, which was a song for a fictional animated group, the Archies. Was that originally meant for the Monkees?
No, Donnie Kirshner loved to say that,
Okay.
Okay.
you know, because um, look, I remember the day that Jeff and I went to Don Kirshner's office and
Hmm.
sat down and I played and sang this verse and chorus to him. That's all Jeff wanted was for me to whatever relationship. I mean, Jeff Barry was already Jeff Barry.
Yeah.
I was a guy that hung around and wrote with him and came up with ideas that he liked and stuff and and it was like a 24/7 um, learning experience for me. So I didn't know what was going on regarding, Krishna or anything, but later on, as I got to know everybody,
Oh.
uh, realized that, okay, well, he'd already left the Monkees.
Mhm.
And so now he finds out that there's a TV show with Betty and Veronica. Who wouldn't want to meet Betty and Veronica? So you're going to stay up all night and write for her or them. So I think somewhere deep down, I think he needed to look. I'm not going to speak for Donnie. All I can say is that it was an Archie record. It was an Archie thought, you know, to write that, and it had never was never meant for Mickey or Davy or you know.
But you did write for the Monkees later on, right?
Yes, but that was for their last album because I think they owed RCA an album.
Mhm.
So Davy Jones in his book, um, someone told me that he said, "Well, Andy Kim gave me the ones that he didn't want to record." You know, I'm not that good and I'm not that powerful, Davy. I mean, you know, people give you more power
Sure.
than you have. Because I never thought about power. I never thought about anything. I just
Hmm.
was happy to be in an
Yeah.
environment that,
Well,
go
but maybe
ahead.
that was just how Davy Jones had it in his mind, like if you gave him those songs and they're good songs and he was successful with them, he assumed you didn't want to do them. I don't know. There's your story, his story, and then the real story. Everyone has their own version
Oh,
of.
sure, absolutely. Look,
Hmm.
I was a fan of the Monkees. I
Mhm.
like those guys. Look, it's one of those things where when people ask me about, you know, um, Sugar Sugar, here's the truth. I can't take a bow for inspiration. It happened 10 minutes. Now, if you want to talk about Rock Me Gently, then you can go over the lyric and know where I was with someone
We're
walking
definitely going to get there. Yes.
the
Yeah.
sand of Malibu. That's a different thing. But Sugar Sugar was like, I don't know. So May 24th, 1969, Baby I Love You hits the charts for the first time and became my first million seller. May 24th, 1969, Sugar Sugar was released, and nobody wanted to play it till July, the middle of July. So it eventually becomes number one, record of the year, if you can imagine, record of the year. So there's number one for 4 weeks, record of the year. And 5 years later, on the same day that Sugar Sugar was number one, Rock Me Gently went to number one in all the bills. So I turn around and I think something is moving this spirit in a way that I don't understand, but I'll accept it.
Also, that I read that no one wanted to produce it at first.
No, here's what happened. Basically, there's a great adage in the Brill Building, especially in Jerry and Mike's office. You're only as good as your last 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So if it's like ratings. If your ratings, are kind of okay, they may, they're going to wait for you to make something great, and then they'll say, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I have had a time in my life where I wasn't having hits or stuff. Everybody started to move away from New York, went to California. Jeff moved to LA as well, and he signed with A&M and had some great records, hits, and I stayed in New York for a little while, and then I went to Los Angeles, and wasn't there that long. And I wrote Rock Me Gently. It was something that I had lived from about after dinner in Malibu till about 4 a.m. when I got home. So I picked up the guitar, started playing. And if you read the lyrics, that's what happened. And so I just loved the song, and I loved the feel, and I loved the thing. And so I decided I'm going to produce myself. I've been around Jeff long enough to believe that, okay, I'm going to try this. So I didn't know any musicians. And so my friend in New York said, why don't you call the Musicians Union? And I still remember it was a Friday night. It was an 8 to 11 session. And it was raining. And I went to McDonald's. I had a hamburger and some fries. And I got to the studio. And the guys were there. I had no idea who they were. So I introduced myself. And there was this feeling that they knew about Sugar Sugar. I just, you get that feeling that, okay, well, we know. So I started playing them the song, and eventually we made a bet track. And I stayed a couple of extra hours and listened and listened and listened. And then I got a tape of it. I went back to the place I was staying at, and I was up for quite a while. I hadn't put my vocal on it, but it was just the groove of it all. And it had no clav part. It had nothing, just bass, drums, guitars. And I later find out that those guys are like brilliant. Part of the wrecking crew, they call them, you know. You know, sometimes songs just come to you. Sometimes they're an after effect of being with a beautiful lady. I thought I had recorded and produced the best thing I'd ever done. You know, I I you can't compare your kids to other kids.
Right.
You can't compare your kids to your own kids. It's just they are who they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
This
this
is
one.
this sounds
But
insignificant, but what was the restaurant in Malibu? Do you remember? I'll tell you if it's still there.
you know what? I don't remember the restaurant. I remember her. Um,
Perfect answer.
I
Mhm.
remember that it was someone that I did not know, except a friend of mine. I had just moved to Los Angeles. My business manager bought me a penthouse, and I had a brand new Mercedes in the garage downstairs. Two things. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't know how to drive. I never wanted to drive. You know, in New York City, you take the bus, the subway, streetcar, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. Um, so, um, anyway, so he said, hey, I got to drop something off before we go to lunch. Going to his attorney's office, I went up the elevator with him and I sat down. And as I sat down, there was this girl that walked across, you know, because there was like this huge gap of offices and stuff. So, so she went back and forth doing stuff, and I kept just there was something. So anyway, I got in the elevator with my buddy, and I said, "Who's that girl?" He said, "Forget about it. That's not going to happen." I said, "But it doesn't matter who is she?" And he gave me her name, and he said, "No, you know, everybody. She's very serious. She's going to be an attorney one day, and she's in this office and all of that stuff." I said, "Well, you know, maybe I'll call the office." And what's the name of the what's the? So he gave me the office number. I called and asked for her, and she got on the phone. I said, "Hi, my name is Andy Kim, and I was just there with my buddy yada yada." And she said, "Oh yeah, I saw you." I said, "Well, I saw you too." I said, "I'm new in the city. Um, would you can I take you for dinner?" She said, "No." I said, "Okay, well, maybe at another time." She said, "No." I said, "Well, geez, you know, I thought that New York was tough, but, you know, I mean, I'm here alone. I don't want to do anything, but I want to eat, but I don't know anyone in the city." She said, "Well, where are you?" And I told her where I was, you know, like it was, look, if you've been in LA, you know where the old Tower Records.
Yeah.
Said
Sunset.
Ben Horn.
Ben Hor. Yeah.
And so if you look up, there's that building up there. I think Neil Sedaka still lives up there or something.
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, I look out onto the city and stuff. And so I said, look, she says, pick me up at 7. I said, well, you know, I don't drive. I said, but I have a brand new Mercedes. If you took a cab, I'll pay for the cab, and then you can drive the car. And there was silence. And she said, okay. So I called the guy and I want to make sure that I mean, the car's not been driven,
Mm-hmm.
but, you know. So she pulls up and it's like love at first sight for me, second sight. So we get in the car and she says, "So where do you want to go?" I said, "I have no idea. There's not a lot of places I would walk somewhere." She said, "Well, there's a place in Malibu that I like." I said, "Perfect." So we go and we have dinner. And we're walking out, and she says, "Have you walked the beach?" And I said, "No." She said, "Well, we walked the beach."
Hmm.
So anyway, at
Yes,
4 o'clock in
yes.
the morning, she drops me off. I tell her she can take the car and drive it and have it until I get a driver's license. So she had it for a good like 6 months because I never got a driver's license. So when you ain't it good, ain't it right that you are with me here tonight?
That paints a picture. You could be in Montreal working in the food company with your brothers, but you're with a beautiful woman walking the beach in Malibu in the middle of the night. I'm just saying, life is good. Life is good.
God was always on time, is the way I look at it. You're not there to get into trouble.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
um
Well, that's beautiful. We're putting that in the movie too, by the way, about your life. Okay, so Rock Me Gently, you got a gold record for that. And it was given to you by a little artist by the name of John Lennon. Jeez, what was that like for you? Was that surreal? I mean, did you get to
yeah, you
interact
know
with him?
what? It was basically um look, I'm at Capitol Records with the chairman of the board,
Uh-huh.
and talking about Top of the Pops, and he wants to come with me when I go to the UK, and we're talking, and all of a sudden the door opens, and there's all I see is someone unwrapping something and it's crunching the paper or whatever it is. And he said, Andy Kim, great record. And the chairman looks at me and takes me by the elbow and ushers me out the door because we were supposed to have a gathering on the sales and promotion, which was downstairs on the ninth floor, I think. Um, so he kind of ushered me out because John Lennon was in the room. But here I am. I have this record. And then he's promoting whatever gets you through the night with Elton John.
Hmm.
He's on KHJ. Remember KHJ?
93 KHJ
Yep.
AM. Yeah.
And so I'm just listening, and there he is. He's doing the countdown. They used to do countdowns every now and then. And I forget whether it was a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or every Tuesday or Thursday or whatever it is. And and one number one, he said, "Oh, yeah, Andy Kim, I gave him a gold record yesterday." And then to prove all of it that it's really real, when Spector was doing the album with Lennon, I got permission from him, and I said, "Is it possible that?" He said, "Well, let, let me see if I could just be someone in behind just everyone. I just don't want to be seen. I just want to be like, oh my God." And he sent me a note and he said, John says okay, like I'm a friend.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so when you're living your one and only life and you're believing that God is on time, some things are just miraculous. You
Yeah.
can't buy this stuff.
No, well, let me ask you, since you just brought him up. So you hung out with Phil Spector, just besides all the stuff later on, which all that, but he's a genius musical, talent. I mean, the famous for the Wall of Sound, like you said. So, what was he like during the time that you were hanging out with him?
Well, first of all, I'm in awe, It's like I'm in awe of the fact that, you know, I could look and there's, Jerry and Mike's office. I was in awe of the fact that now Jeff's office had a partner in there, and when he was not there, I could go 24/7. I had nowhere else to go. Um, and I heard stories and never got to get into hey, how about lunch? Or hey, how about, and it was just, I remember Bill Medley tell me one time when they were doing You've Lost That, You've Lost That Love and Feeling.
Hmm.
And the the whole orchestration was scratched. He started from scratch after, and then he finally found what he wanted. And it was like, he said it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I think it was like 4 track. Was it 4 track back then? I don't know I don't think it was 8 track. I think it was like 4 track.
Hmm.
And he said, and through it all, he's walking out with Bobby and he says, night, and there's Phil Spector with a razor slicing the tape just a little bit because he heard something that he wanted to take out and maybe put somewhere else. So the only thing I have to say about him is that I'm in awe, just the way I'm in awe of Jeff Barry, who, out of the clear blue said, have you had lunch? You know, and later on, um, you know, Jeff's first child, middle name is Andy. So go and figure that out.
Wow.
I can't. I really can't. You know.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people who knew Spector was pretty shocked when common knowledge what happened. He went to prison for murder, to bring it dark. But yeah, he didn't. There were no telltale signs that there was a real dark side to him.
Well, I don't know. I mean, everyone always said there was a dark side to him. I wasn't that close to him to feel the darkness or to
Yeah,
feel anything. I mean,
Mhm.
you were
there are
just
stories that move around and do that, and but I was in the balcony when all those things were happening, and then you'd hear it somewhere
Mm.
on you know, on a lunch break or something. But
yeah.
all I remember is the great music and
Yeah.
all of the sound, the way it just like, oh my God.
Yeah, you were in awe of
Yeah.
his talent, sure.
Yeah.
So you collaborated with Ed Robertson of Bare Naked Ladies. How did that come about?
Well, I've had my uh, 2 minutes and 30 seconds disappear and come back and disappear and come back. Um, I'd met Ed uh, because there was an AIDS concert called Kumbaya in Toronto. And so I flew in from LA and met Ed and Steven. And Ed on guitar is electrifying, just just magical. And the two voices, and I figured, okay, this is really great. And then I asked Ed, I said, we did it one time and it sounded monster great. And I said, can we just do it one time, just so right, because this is sounding so great. And then we do it, and then I was excited. I said, so we're about to leave this little club that opened their door in the afternoon for us. Um, and I said, when do I speak to the keyboard player? Because I want to talk to him about the clavinet part. And he said, we don't have a keyboard player. It's just me, Steven, drummer, and bass player. He didn't mention upright bass. He just said bass player. So, so now I'm thinking to myself, geez, I've not been around for a long time. And now I'm doing this thing with strangers. And they're called the Bare Naked Ladies. And so this little thing inside of me kept saying, so what are you afraid of? And I said, well, I'm just, there's no clavinet and no this, and no one's going to remember me. I haven't been around. And what are you afraid of? what are you afraid of? And then I thought, okay, I'll do it. So they picked me up, someone in someone's car, and we go to this, it's now Budweiser stage or whatever it is. It was that. And so I get out of the car and there's people snapping my picture. My God, it's Andy Kim. Oh my God, it's Andy Kim. It's Andy. And I thought to myself, okay, wait a minute. I haven't had a musical life. I've had some people record my songs or do demos and all that stuff. And Ed and I just hit it off. So he called me one day and he said, hey, I'd like to write a song with you. I said, well, I think my recording days are kind of like, He said, no. I think I'd write a song with you and I'll produce it. And it was, I forgot to mention, which was so different from anything I've ever thought about. And we've been friends ever since. And he's so talented and so unafraid.
We wrote a song together and I loved every minute of it.
So, with Ed, I got the sense that there was something that I could hang on with as far as the musicality goes.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
Andy, I'd like to tell you something that I'm hoping you already know, and I'm sure other people have already said this, but when you mentioned that hey, listen, I was around for 2.5 minutes and then I was gone for a while and then I'm back or whatever. I get that from an artist's perspective, and I'm not pandering here. Like, to your listeners, you're never gone.
Yeah.
Like for instance, my brother Larry, this was a while back because we were sending each other mixed CDs, right? And one of his had, with the Sharpie, like feel good songs. It makes you feel good. Rock Me Gently's on there. Rock Me Gently was on one that I sent him. And, I told him the other day, hey, Andy Kim's coming on the show. You give, it sounds corny, but you give a gift to people that lives all the time. You're never really gone.
Also, just said, like I said a few minutes ago, my son is in his young 20s now. So this is, almost, 50 years almost after the song comes out. And he's a fan. He loves it. He, like I said, he was excited that you were coming on also.
Well, you know what? I'm very oblivious to that, to be honest with you.
That's why I wanted to tell you to make sure you knew.
Well, you know what? I really appreciate it. And I'm humbled by it, to be honest with you. I feel very blessed and lucky. And to be around, look, I've been around the guys who created this stuff, So so thank you. Thank you so much for saying that.
Of course, thank you.
I do want to ask you, though, a couple of years ago, just to honor you also, because you were appointed to the Order of Canada. Could you just talk a little about your reaction when you found out what that means to you personally?
Oh, someone called me and they said, Andy Kim. And I said, yes. And they said, well, we are honored to tell you that you are been inducted into the officer of the Order of Canada. And then I thought someone was wanking me, it was like, oh. I heard it again and I started crying. I couldn't stop crying. I had no idea. I cried because my mom and dad were not around anymore. I just realized that, how I can't tell them. I can't say, hey, look, I'm part of, this culture, this country that is just blessed my parents coming here. And I still don't understand it. I find myself living in the shadow of me sometimes, you know. It's just because so many things have materialized. And then again, it's like God is always on time, and thank you, God.
Hmm.
It's not, I don't really, um, I'm not smart enough to get it, but I'm smart enough to live it. So I just feel like, wow. So when you guys look up Broken Social Scene,
Mhm.
Mhm.
you see the name Kevin Drew, and then when you this guy comes to me and says, "Hey man, I want to produce your next album." And I said, "Well, I don't think anyone's waiting for my next album." He says, "No, no, I want to produce your next album." And I end up writing a whole album with him.
Hmm.
And we end up doing the Letterman show together just before Letterman retires.
Yeah.
And then we go to LA. He says, "Oh, we're going to LA now." I said, "What do you mean we're going to LA?" He said, "Yeah, no, yeah, yeah." Because we were here doing some stuff in Toronto. And he says, "Yeah, Hal Wilner. Do you know Hal Wilner?" Hal Wilner, before he passed away, was the musical conductor for Saturday Night Live.
Hmm.
Just a great, great guy. And he says, "Yeah, Hal Wilner's got this thing, and there's like a whole bunch of people, and all, you know, some guys from the UK, like Nick Cave. Do you know Nick Cave?" I said,
Yes, Nick Cave, I know.
"No," you know.
Yeah.
And so we go, and before you know it, I'm on stage singing "Sugar Sugar" with Courtney Love.
Yeah.
My idea, but when you read about Kevin, you'll understand who he is.
Hmm.
When you told him, "Hey, no one's waiting for my album," or whatever,
Yeah.
you need to remember your words. Your words. To analyze is to paralyze. All right.
Okay. Thank
You
you.
gotta live it, my friend. You gotta live it. Hey, so in 2005 you started Andy Kim Christmas. You've been doing it ever since, and is there one this year?
Yeah, there's my 21st.
No.
Awesome.
And you know, the interesting thing for me has always been the fact that I guess you never leave the neighborhood.
Hmm.
You never leave, you know, the stuff that is around there in your life, you know.
Right.
So and I've always, before I even started the idea of the Christmas show, I've always gone to orphanages and to children's hospitals with a guitar, no matter where I was around the world. It's, you know, I think your upbringing always stays with you. You may want to drink it away, you may want to do something about it to forget it, but
Right.
the 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 tentacles are always there.
I know you left Montreal relatively early, but how's your French? Do you speak French?
Pas français, mais oui, un petit peu. I've forgotten. I can understand it more than I can speak it.
Uh-huh.
You know, we live in a country here in Canada where it's just it's got its magic,
Hmm.
and then it's got the two languages that make it
Mhm.
difficult, you know. But not difficult in a way where you can't exist, but just the language barrier is
Mhm.
not something that we should be beyond that.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Celebrate the fact that we are one country, you know.
Yeah.
Well, anyone ask you before you go, because on your site you wrote you're always working. So what do you have planned next? You've mentioned some of them already. So what do you have in the works?
Well, you know, I'm doing a Christmas show in Toronto, Montreal, and this year for the first time in Vancouver.
Mm.
I started working with Dan Hill. Do you know Dan Hill?
Yes, yes,
Times when we touch.
yes, of course. Yes.
He had called me one day and he wanted to know if I would do a show with him, like acoustically. He'd sing a song, I'd sing a song, he'd sing. Well, I've known Dan since 1976, and he said, "Are you interested?" I said, well, yeah, I usually have a band. I've never done it acoustically, you know. He said, "Well, would you try it?" I said, "Yeah, I'll try it." He said, "Do you want to get together and talk about it?" I said, "No, I'd rather not talk about it. I just want to see how I can live it, you know." So anyway, so I meet him at our first gig, and it was like breathing fresh air.
Hmm.
It was just brilliant. And he's such a kind guy, man. He's just really, really talented, but pure. And I love that about him. And he's one of my best friends. I can tell him everything, anything. And he won't pick up the phone and say, "Hey, you know, I just listened to Andy Kim. He's really fucked up today." You know, that kind of stuff. That doesn't happen.
That's good. Well, Andy, how can people follow you on social media?
I have no idea. No, I have a Facebook and an X that someone helps me every now and then, but
Yeah.
if you can see, it's, you know, a month ago that I posted anything.
Well, we'll make sure to look it up and put the links in there. Andy, I want to say that we are both huge fans, and we were so honored that you took the time to speak with us today. We're, like I said, we're incredibly grateful. So
Yeah.
thank you.
You're a prince. You're a prince,
Yes.
Andy Kim. You really
Well,
are. Great guy.
So are you guys, man. I appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time. And I'm going to remember everything that went on today until tomorrow. And
Make sure that-
Yeah,
we'll
until
send you the
tomorrow.
link. So again, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Moosie Drier. And again, a very special thanks to Andy Kim. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast. Listening to this podcast just makes you really cool.